went on. Two brilliant Englishmen come to America and write an opera, which isn't really an opera, about an American folk hero who isn't really an American folk hero. But don't worry, because when the opera begins, you'll be on the far side of the curtain. You'll be on stage, which is more than I can say for Paul Bunyan, who doesn't appear in the opera at all. In fact, Paul Bunyan is my idea of the perfect leading man. He's very tall and he's invisible. There's only one thing that's absolutely clear about this New York City opera production. This will not be like the last opera you saw, or the next one either. It all started when two brilliant expatriates, the poet W.H. Auden and the composer Benjamin Britten, sat down to write a Broadway musical about the American spirit. It's not clear how much the two of them actually knew about Broadway, or what we should call this piece. They called it an operetta. And tonight, you may wonder whether we should call it an opera telecast, because we're going to take you behind the scenes so that you'll see it not only from the audience's point of view, but from the point of view of the invisible Paul Bunyan, his giant invisible axe, and his great blue ox. That's axe and ox. The ox is also invisible, and she goes by the name of Babe. So nothing about tonight's opera is what it seems to be, and even the experience of watching it will seem inside out, as we'll see in a moment. Now that the performance is about to begin, we're going to share a memorable night at the opera, and I'll see you at intermission.
As Beverly Sills indicated, the story of Paul Bunyan is rather complicated, and in a few moments I'll read you the synopsis for Part 1. But I'd like to remind you that you can now visit the Live from Lincoln Center website at PBS Online. That's www.pbs.org. And now to that synopsis of Part 1. The operetta is in two parts. In Part 1, the primeval forest scene, young trees complain about old trees and their set ways. Wild geese prophesy that all will change with the birth of Paul Bunyan, when the moon turns blue. The prophecy comes true. Paul Bunyan quickly grows to an astounding size and dreams of becoming the greatest logger in history. With Babe, his huge bright blue ox, Paul finds the forest he will clear to begin civilization. He recruits lumberjacks, cooks, and an intellectual accountant. Paul marries Carrie, a girl of the proper size. Their daughter Tiny is born. Years later, Carrie dies, and Tiny, now a young woman, arrives at Paul's camp. Paul notices that some of the loggers are growing restless and long to settle down as farmers. We'll meet many people in Part 1. The six principals are Elizabeth Comeaux as Tiny, John McDonough as Paul Bunyan, Jeffrey Lentz as Johnny Inkslinger, David M. Lutken as Ballad Singer, Erin Caves as Helson, and John McVeigh as Hot Biscuit Slim. As Beverly Sills indicated, Paul Bunyan was written while both Britten and Auden were residing in the United States at the outbreak of the Second World War in Europe. Here now, our conductor, Stuart Robertson. And in just a moment, we'll have Part 1 of Paul Bunyan, the operetta, music by Benjamin Britten, libretto by W.H. Auden.
A cold wind blew through the crooked thorn. Up in the north a boy was born. His hair was black, his eyes were blue, his mouth turned up at the corners too. A fairy stood beside his bed. You shall never, never grow old, she said. Paul Bunyan is to be your name. Then she departed whence she came. You must believe me when I say he grew 6 inches every day. You must believe me when I speak. He gained 3, 4, 6 pounds every week. He grew so fast by the time he was 8. He was as tall as the Empire State. The length of his stride, an historical fact, 3.7 miles to be exact. When he ordered a jacket, the New England mills 4 months had no more unemployment ills. When he wanted a snapshot to send to his friends, they found they had to use a telephoto lens. But let me tell you in advance, his dreams were of greater significance. His favorite dream was of felling trees, a fancy which grew by swift degrees. One night he dreamt he was to be the greatest logger in history. He woke to feel something stroking his brow and found it was the tongue of an enormous cow. From horn to horn and from lug to lug was 47 axe heads and a backy plug. But what would have most bewildered you was the color of her hide, which was bright, bright blue. But Bunyan wasn't surprised at all. Said, I'll call you babe and you can call me Paul. He pointed to a meadow, said, take a bite, for you're leaving with me for the south tonight. Over the mountains and across the streams, they went to find Paul Bunyan's dreams. The bear and the beaver waved a paw, the magpie chattered, the squirrel swore. Trappers ran out from their lonely huts, scratching their heads with their rifle butts. For a year and a day they traveled fast, and this is the place, Paul said at last. The forest stretched for miles around. The sound of their breathing was the only sound. Paul picked a pine tree and scratched his shins, said this is the place where our work begins.
It is a spring morning without benefit of young persons. It is a sky that has never registered weeping or rebellion. It is a forest full of innocent beasts. There are none who blush at the memory of an ancient folly. None who hide beneath dyed fabrics a malicious heart. It is America, but not yet. Wanted, disturbers of public order, men without foresight or fear. Wanted, energetic madmen, those who have thought themselves a body large enough to devour their dreams. Wanted, the lost, those indestructibles whom defeat can never change. Poets of the bottle, clergymen of a ridiculous gospel, Actors who should have been engineers, and lawyers who should have been sea captains. Saints of circumstance, desperados, unsuccessful wanderers, all who can hear the invitation of the earth. America, youngest of her daughters, awaits the barbarians of marriage.
Just about to drown myself, a voice came from the sky, says no one like a shanty boy to catch a maid and
Oh, long ago in Germany, been sitting at my ease, there came a knocking at the door, und it was the police. I tiptoed down the backstage, and a voice to me did say, there's freedom in the forest out in North America. We rise above the day, we're happy and gay, we're long.
White and gold across. I hope I heard the Peterson say before a while with us. To an end of opportunity when working was for all, especially for shanty boys in winter and in fall. We're not just be sorry, yes, we're not
and sit down. We have no time to waste. The trees are waiting for the axe, and we must all make haste. So, who shall be the foreman to set in hand the work, to organize the logging, and see men do not shirk?
But once you get an idea, if you never get it out again.
What are your names?
Crosshaulson.
In your opinion, which of you, which one would be the best to be the leader of the few and govern all the rest? you, it seems, will do. We must find another.
Yes! But he...
A telegram from overseas. A telegram from overseas. Here's the name of the addressee. Here's the name of the addressee.
Bad news? Good news? Tell us what you're reading.
I have a message that will please you from the King of Sweden. Dear Paul, I hear you are looking for a head foreman, so I'm sending you the finest logger in my kingdom, Helson. He doesn't talk much. Wishing you every success, yours sincerely, Nelson King. Are you Helson?
I think so.
Do you know all about logging?
I think so.
Are you prepared to be my head foreman?
I think so.
Then I think so too. Now, for one to cook or bake, flapjacks, cookies, fish or steak.
Sam Sharkey at your service.
Benny at your service.
Sam for soup.
Ben for beans.
Soup feed you.
Beans for vitamins.
Soup satisfy. Soup gratify.
And beans that make your food delay.
To promotion are you passed over? And does your wife talk in her sleep? Then get our nearest agent to tell you about soaps for success.
You owe it to yourself to learn about beans and how this delicious food is the sure way to the body. Beautiful. We will mail you a fascinating booklet, Beans for Beauty, by return of post. If you'll send us your delight.
Good day, stranger. What's your name?
Johnny, Inkslinger.
Can you read?
Think of a language and I'll write you its dictionary.
Can you handle figures?
Think of an irrational number and I'll double it.
You're just the man I hoped to find, for I have large accounts to mind.
Sorry, I'm busy.
What's your job?
Just looking around.
Who do you work for?
Myself. Silly, this is a free country. Excuse me.
What about a delicious bowl of soup?
What would you say to a nice plate of beans?
On a double portion of both, please.
Wait a minute. How are you going to pay for your supper?
Don't know. Never thought of it.
If you work for me, you shall eat splendidly. But no work, no pay.
No sale. Good day.
Now what on earth are we to do? For I can't keep accounts. Can you?
Don't worry. He'll come back. Now, what else do we lack?
Well, I'd like a dog to lick up all the crumbs and chase away the salesmen and all the drunken bums.
I'd like a pair of cats to catch mice and rats.
Off to supper and to bed, for all our future lies ahead, and all our work must be begun at the rising of the sun. Of an untraveled empire, standing in empty dusk upon the eve of a tremendous task. A dream of warning.
In the streets of New York, I was young and well. I rode the market fair. One morning I found myself there. I didn't know, sir, didn't saloons I leave the sun. Lost in deserts of alkali, I lay down the lie. There's always the sorrow that let you down. Whiskey can never drown. You don't know, sir, you don't know.
Hello, Mr. Inkslinger. Lost anything?
I want my supper.
What about my little proposition?
You win. I'll take it. Now, where is the kitchen, Mr. Bunyan?
Call me Paul.
No. You're stronger than I, so I must do what you ask. But I'm not going to pretend to like you. So good night.
Good night, Johnny. And good luck.
The spring came and the summer and fall. Paul Bunyan sat at his binnacle, regarding like a lighthouse lamp the work going on in the lumber camp. Dreaming dreams which now and then he liked to tell to his lumbermen. His phrases rolled like waves on a beach, and during the course of a single speech, young boys grew up and needed a shave. Old men got worried they'd be late for the grave. He woke one morning feeling unwell. Said, "Babe, what's the matter? I feel like hell." Babe cocked her head and said, "Get a wife. One can have too much of the bachelor life." And so one morning in the month of May, Paul went wife hunting at the break of day. He kept a sharp lookout, but all the gals he saw were much too small. Until at last he came to a valley green, with mountains beside and a river between. And there on the bank before his eyes he beheld a girl of the proper size. The average man, if he walked in haste, would have taken a week to get round her waist. If you looked at her bosom, you couldn't fail to see it was built on a generous scale. They eyed each other for an interval, Then she said, I'm Carrie, and he said, I'm Paul. What happened then, I've no idea. They never told me, and I wasn't there. But whatever it was, she became his wife, and they started in on a married life. And in a year, a daughter came. Tiny she was, and tiny her name. Now I wish I could say that Carrie and Paul were a happy pair, but they weren't at all. It's not the business of a song to say who was right and who was wrong. Both said the bitter things that pain, and wished they hadn't, but said them again, till Carrie said at last one day, it's no use, Paul, I must go away. Paul struck a match and lit his pipe, said it seems a pity, but perhaps you're right. So Carrie returns to her homeland, leading Tiny by the hand, and Paul stayed in camp with the lumbermen, though he paid them visits now and then. One day Tiny telegraphed him, come quick, very worried, mother sick, but the doctor met him at the door and said, I've bad news for you, Paul. She's dead. He ran upstairs, stood by her bed. Poor Carrie, he murmured and stroked her head. I know we fought and I was to blame, but I loved you greatly all the same. He picked up Tiny and stroked her hair. Said, I've not been much of a father, dear, but I'll try to be better until the day when you want to give your heart away. And whoever the lucky man may be, I hope he's a better man than me. So they got ready to return to the camp of which you now shall learn.
Nothing but soups and beans.
Soup gives me ulcers.
I'm allergic to beans.
Have you seen the chief about it, Johnny?
He's not back yet from his wife's funeral.
Something's got to be done about it.
And done quick.
Things have gone too far. The sort of fellow whom you might expect to battle for a felon as a more. Who would look as long as Jami if he wasn't Walker Bradley with a lot to learn and more. Who would howl like some austere for a sheriff if but now you find him on the side of me. Who would criticize the something in the eyes and he wasn't but a lot to learn me.
And as for Ben's beans, well, there's not a dish like them anywhere, but don't you think that occasionally, say, once a month, we could have something different?
Yeah!
I can't believe it.
It's not possible.
After all we've done for them. Very well, very well.
From now on, you shall do the cooking yourself.
Sam, Ben, please listen.
Don't apologize. We are not angry.
Just a little sad, that's all.
Come, Sam.
Come, Ben.
Now look what you have done.
What I did, you asked me to.
You know I've only spoken fun.
I never understood what you meant. What I did, you asked me to. I said it wouldn't be. You heard me, didn't you? What would you have done instead?
Never mind beyond the doubt. You have put us in the red, so you better get us out.
What's your name? Slip. Well, you don't look like a logger. Where do you come from? I come from open spaces where over endless grass, the stroking winds and shadows of cloud and bison pass. My brothers were the buffalo, my house the shining day. I dance between the horses like a butterfly at play. In fair days and in power round the world and back, I must hunt my shadow and the self I lack. One winter evening, as I sat by my campfire alone, I heard a whisper from the flame. The voice was like my own. Oh, get you up and get you gone. Not south or east or west, this emptiness cannot enter the heart in your breast. Oh, ride, or houses, no light and narrow place, where you can force your face to silence heartaches and things all round the world and back. I must lose my shadow, my shadow, my shadow. Chance. Sure.
Can you cook flapjacks?
Yes.
Fish?
Yes.
Steaks?
Yes.
Cookies?
Yes.
Sam and Benny, get the sack! Look. 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 The chief is back. And look.
Company? That's mighty nice of you.
Say, Fido, I want to ask you a question. Are you happy? Well, then I'll tell you a secret. Neither am I. May I tell you the story of my life? Now, you're sure it won't bore you.
In love.
never knew he had a daughter. She's much lovelier than I thought her.
Tiny. What a pretty name. I'm delighted that she came.
Her eyes,
Her cheeks. Her lips.
her nose.
She's a peach. A dove.
A rose.
Look at me, Miss Tiny. I'm 6 feet tall.
Look at me, Miss Tiny. I've the bluest eyes you ever saw.
Feel my biceps, Miss Tiny.
I can ride a bicycle.
I can spell parallelogram. P-A-R-A-L-L-L.
I've got $50 salted away in an old sock. I'll run errands for you. I'll bring you your breakfast in bed. I'll tell you stories before you go to sleep. Once upon a time, out of the... I'll make you laugh by pulling faces. I'm big and husky. You need someone to look after you.
You need someone to look after.
I'm sick. Leave her alone, you fools. Have you forgotten? Her mother has just died. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Miss Tiny. Father says I was to help you in the kitchen.
I'm sure you'll be a great help, Miss Tiny. This way. Please.
Did you see the way he looked at her? Did you see the way she looked at him? I'm going to take cooking lessons.
Johnny?
Yes, Mr. Bunyan.
Has anything happened since I've been away?
Keep an eye on Helson. He broods too much by himself, and I don't like the look on his face. And that bunch he goes around with, they're a bad bunch.
Poor Hell. He was born a few hundred years too late. Today there is no place for him. Anything else?
Some of the men say they're tired of logging and would like to settle down. They'd like to try farming.
John Shears?
He's the chief one, but there are many others.
I'll look into it. And what about yourself, Johnny?
I'm all right, Mr. Bunyan.
I know what you want. It's harder than you think, and not so pleasant. But you shall have it, and shan't have to wait much longer. Good night, Johnny.
Good night, Mr. Bunyan.
Still Mr. Bunyan.
Good night, Paul.
Good night, Mr. Bunyan.
Good night. Happy dreams. Now let the complex spirit dissolve in the darkness, where the actual and the possible are mysteriously exchanged. For the saint must descend into hell, that his order may be tested by its disorder. The hero return to the humble womb, that his will may be pacified and refreshed. Dear children, trust the night and have faith in tomorrow, that these hours of ambiguity and indecision may be also the hours of healing.
And so ends part one of the operetta Paul Bunyan, with music by Benjamin Britten and the libretto by W.H. Auden. The six principals whom we met in this first part were Elizabeth Comeaux as Tiny, John McDonough as Paul Bunyan, Jeffrey Lentz as Johnny Inkslinger, David M. Lutken as the ballad singer, Erin Caves as Helson, and John McVeigh as Hot Biscuit Slim. Did you notice shades of Kurt Weill in that ballad, You Don't Know All, Sir, You Don't Know All? And also shades of the Britain to come in Mother, Oh Mother. Now again, let's go to our host, Beverly Sills.
Well, if you're still wondering where Paul Bunyan is, I'm afraid I can't help you. But if you're intrigued about how Benjamin Britten and W.H. Auden ended up creating this work, then you're about to be enlightened. Director Mark Lamos and conductor Stuart Robertson will tell us in a moment if this is all a joke at our expense. Were these sophisticated Englishmen making fun of our American folk art? And what were they doing in a boarding house in Brooklyn with Gypsy Rose Lee, yeah, the stripper, and novelist Carson McCullers as roommates? But they'll also help us understand why a piece that never made it to Broadway and was panned by the critics when it first opened is still very much alive. It's one thing to be told that this was created by a writer and a composer of genius. It's a whole lot more interesting to be able to hear it for ourselves. That's why it's great to snag the director and conductor at intermission and have them shed light on the subject at hand. Who knows? They may even know where Paul Bunyan went. Here are director Mark Lamos and conductor Stuart Robertson in conversation with John Goberman.
Why would a successful British composer like Benjamin Britten, I guess you could call him Great Britain, write an opera, his first opera, about an American folk hero? Why would this happen?
It's an interesting marriage, isn't it? And an unlikely one. I think partially it had to do with the infatuation for things American that Auden and Britten seemed to share as young men.
Why? Because they came from England? What were they doing here?
Well, I think the answer to that question is very considerably financial security.
Really?
I think at this time, we're talking about 1939, you know, the things looking very, very dark in Europe.
Wasn't there a threat of war? It was pretty serious if you were in Europe, I imagine.
There was a threat of war. Britain was a pacifist.
Did he come to escape the war, then?
I think that was a criticism that he heard from his British compatriots, that he was running away.
I don't know that Britain was so much of a committed pacifist as, for instance, Piers or Auden were at the same time. I think he kind of went along with it a little bit.
Huh. So they came here from England all at the same time? Were they friends? Why did they...
Auden and Isherwood, I think, first, early in 1939, and then a few months later, Britten and Piers moved out.
How old was he then?
I think
26.
Yeah.
But he was already an established composer.
Britten and Auden had actually worked together for a number of years beforehand.
And then they came to the United States and stayed on Amityville, Long Island, with Elizabeth Meyer and her husband, a psychiatrist, and then moved to Brooklyn and lived in a boarding house with an extraordinary group of unusual artists.
Who's there?
Salvador Dali,
Paul Bowles, the American composer.
Carson McCullers.
Gypsy Rose Lee.
Yes, right.
It must have been quite a household, I think.
Britten had a hard time writing, he said. He needed the quiet and would go back out to Long Island whenever he could, to the Myers house.
I think they had a real problem. As I said, they found it just a bit too bohemian. And then there was the practical aspect of actually trying to get some work done. When you just put a cast of characters like that together for 24 hours a day, you know, you're not going to get any work done, would you? Would I? No, probably not. It'd be highly entertaining.
It's a 20th century cast for La Boheme, isn't it, really? I mean, it's all of these struggling artists living in a boarding house of some kind, all with their different youthful artistic agendas, whether it's to be some sort of performer on Broadway or a stripper, as Gypsy Rose Lee turned out to be, transforming burlesque into something else. Oliver Smith transforming American scenic design. all of these people at the beginning of what were going to be very distinguished and erratically interesting and rather powerful careers.
All very disparate.
Very different, very different. So, you know, you look at kids today in New York City, also now many of them, many artists living in Brooklyn because they can't afford living in Manhattan anymore. And there's a similar, you know, energy when you say, well, you know, you call up one of these kids to talk about something, and there are 5 other people that you can leave messages for, and one's a painter, one's a dancer, one's a, you know, it must have been that kind of energy. And it's never very pleasant. I mean, I never feel, in Bohème, for instance, that Rodolfo, Marcello, and Colline actually enjoy living in those circumstances. We enjoy seeing them live that way, but they all have different agendas, they all have different artistic principles, it seems.
But none of them really get anything done.
They never get anything done.
But for these British expatriates, was Paul Bunyan a kind of exotic thing to look at?
Originally, Auden and Britten thought that they were writing a Broadway musical.
Why?
They were told by their publishers that that's what was wanted. And in that period, we tend to forget that George and Ira Gershwin were writing political material that was finding its way to Broadway. Ira Gershwin's, you know, brilliant satiric lyrics, even in, you know, Strike Up the Band, and a number of other musicals, were emulated by Auden. Auden was a great fan of Cole Porter's. And Britten, though he was writing so-called serious music, was still searching for a way to write popular music. He was a good popular music writer. And
he was?
Yes, he was.
You mean like a cocktail pianist?
Absolutely. There's a series of songs he wrote that...
It was the cabaret songs.
The cabaret songs.
He wrote with Auden,
yeah.
in fact.
So when Auden and Britten sat down to get to work on Paul Bunyan, they very much... They weren't so much satirizing a Broadway style as really joining the stream of it. There's a satire of Donizetti a little bit, and they make fun of different musical forms, but they use the English music hall form very straightforwardly. They use ballad, blues, all of that sort of style, which you hear in the first part and the second part of Paul Bunyan. They use it in a way that other composers in America, American composers, Russian immigrant composers like Vernon Duke, were using. And Ira Gershwin and Cole Porter were writing the lyrics. The books for these musicals were insipid. They made no sense. The music has lasted. The difference is the Paul Bunyan book still holds, or has begun to hold, in a way that it didn't hold for its initial audiences.
So is it much more sophisticated, though, than an ordinary Broadway approach?
No.
Because it never ended up on Broadway.
It's not sophisticated. You may disagree with this, Stuart, but I think part of the movement of the kinds of writers Auden and Britten and Isherwood considered themselves to be in the 30s and 40s, very much they were interested in speaking to the people. And a lot of the arts in America, the WPA, sorts of things that were going on in the 30s and 40s in the United States, primarily on Broadway, but in other places as well, were very much about bringing the people to culture and bringing the culture to people.
Would that explain the difference in the reviews, both in Time magazine? The first review in Time magazine of the first performance described this as an anemic operetta. The last review of this production in Time magazine, when was that, a couple of years ago, was wildly...
And now we're just about ready for part 2 of Paul Bunyan. In part 2, Paul allows farming on the cleared land. His foreman, Helson, challenges Paul's leadership, but he is sorely defeated. As Paul's fame grows, he decides to move on to tame yet another wilderness. At a farewell party, all prepare to go to their different and surprising ways. Paul says goodbye, telling them, America is what you choose to make it. This work, conceived by Britten and Auden in 1939, first performed in 1941 at the Brander Theater at Columbia University. And did you notice on the poster in the intermission, the admission price was 50 cents. Here now, Stuart Robertson, and we'll have part 2 of the Britten, Auden, Paul Bunyan.
sung, and the night watchmen are already in the deep beginnings of sleep. Leaning upon their implements, the hired men pause to consider their life by the light of mid-morning, and of habits already established in their loosened limbs. And the aggressive will is no longer pure. Much has been done to prepare a continent for the rejoicings and recriminations of all its possible heirs. Much has been ill done. There is never enough time to do more than one thing at a time, and there is always either too much of one thing or too little. Virtuosos of the axe, dynamiters and huntsmen, there has been an excess of military qualities, of the resourcefulness of thieves, the camaraderie of the irresponsible, and the accidental beauties of silly songs. Nevertheless, you have done much to render yourselves unnecessary. Loneliness has worn lines of communication. Irrational destruction has made possible the establishment of a civilized order. Drunkenness and lechery have prepared the way for a routine of temperance and marriage. Already you have provoked a general impulse towards settlements and cultivation.
What does he want to see us for?
I wonder what he has in store.
I never did a thing I shouldn't.
I couldn't. I wouldn't.
I'll do my work. I'll never shirk. I'll never grumble anymore.
I've been thinking for some time that we needed some farmers to grow food for the camp. And looking around for a nice piece of country, the other day I found the very place. A land where the wheat grows as tall as churches, and the potatoes are as big as airships. Now, those who would like to be farmers, stand out.
Since I was only so to live upon a farm and watch the wheat and barley grow. The wheat and barley grow.
Helson?
Yes?
You are in charge while I take our friends to the land of Heart's Desire. I want you to start today clearing the topsy-turvy mountain. Now, boys, if you're ready, we'll start, as we have 1,000 miles to go before noon. But if you think farming is a soft job, you'd better stay right here. If there isn't a flood, there's a drought. If there isn't a frost, there's a heat wave. If it isn't the insects, it's the banks. You'll howl more than you'll sing. You'll frown more than you'll smile. You'll cry more than you'll laugh. But some people seem to like it. Let's get going.
The shanty boy made the wood upon his cruel mission to slay the tallest trees he can, the heights of
as nature's cry for higher education, and is our trusted friend to all the best in vegetation. I hate to be a shanty boy, I want to be a farmer, for I prefer life's harmony to life's brute melodrama. The shanty boy sleeps in a bunk with none to call him dancer, and so you cannot wonder much if he goes to the manor. The farmer sees his little ones grow up like the green willow. At night he has his better half beside him on the pillow. I hate to be a shanty boy, I want to be a farmer, for I prefer life's harmony to life's cruel melodrama.
The topsy-turvy mountain, it's impossible.
He's nuts. Just another of his crazy ideas.
You're not going to take him seriously, are you, Hal? Why do you go on taking orders from a dope like that?
Why don't you run this joint yourself? We'd support you. Sure we would.
Hell for boss! Tell him where he gets off.
Yeah, and that stooge of his, Johnny Inkslinger.
You said it. We'll take him for a ride. Stand up for your rights, Hal. You're the only boss around here.
Get out!
Of course, Hal.
Anything you say, boss. We were just going anyway. Don't forget what we think of you.
Heron, Heron, winging by through the silence of the sky. What have you heard of me, Helson the brave?
Oh, I heard of a hero working for wages, taking orders just like a slave.
Moon, shining bright in the deserts of the night. What have you heard of Helson the fair?
Not what one should hear of one so handsome. The girls make fun of his bashful air.
did you run round and round the earth for fun? What have you heard of Helson, the good? Oh, the old story of virtue neglected, mocked at by others, misunderstood. To and fro, what have you heard of Helson the wise, of Helson the strong?
Oh, it's sad to think of all that wisdom being exploited by smarter guys.
Not what one likes to hear of a fighter. They say he's a coward. I hope they're wrong.
Fido caught them nicking in the pantry after breakfast. Oh, yes, she told me. No one can say I'm narrow-minded, but there are some things that just aren't done until after dark.
Helson, Helson!
He's back. He's mad at you.
Helson, I want to talk to you.
Don't pay any attention to him. Go and settle with him.
Helson!
You're not going to do what he tells you to, are you?
Go on. Wipe the floor with him.
Don't let him think you're a sissy.
Show him you're an American. Give him the works.
I'll kill him.
Attaboy!
Yes, dear.
Where has everybody gone?
I don't know, but I'm glad.
Darling.
Move from the trysting stone, bright sun of summer divine. With my
Take orders from Hawk, or you'll have a fall. We are all put here on earth for a purpose. We all have a job to do, and it is our duty to do it with all our might. We must obey our superiors and live according to our station in life. For whatever the circumstances, the chief, the company, and the customer are always right. Where am I? What happened? Am I dead? Something struck me on the head. You are right there, you're not dead. You are lying in your bed. Why am I so stiff and sore? I remember nothing more. I cannot be a sad. You're all kind of little scrap. Don't worry, now what's take one now. Who was it hit me on the chin?
Sorry, Hill. I had to do it. I'm your friend if you but knew it.
Good heavens, what a fool I've been.
Let bygones be bygones. Forget the past. We can now be friends at last. Each of us has found a brother. You and I both need each other.
That's what we always told you, Hell. How could I ever have been so blind as not to recognize your kind? Now I know you. Scramorel! All Julius understands the truth, and inability to see a joke, and characteristic of uneducated folk. Scramorel! Scramorel! Articulate, people! Scramorel! Scramorel!
Often thoughts of hate conceal. Love we are ashamed to feel. In the climax of a fight, lost affection comes to light.
Helson smiled and Bunyan smiled, and both shook hands and were reconciled, and Paul and Johnny and the Hell became the greatest partners in the logging game. And every day Slim and Tiny swore they were more in love than the day before. All over the states the stories spread of Bunyan's camp and the life they led, of fights with Indians and shooting matches, of monster bears and salmon catches, of the whirling Wimpus Paul fought and killed, and the buttermilk line that he had to build, and 100 other tales were known, from Nantucket Island to Oregon, from the New York Alps to the Rio Grande, from the Dust Bowl down to the Cotton Land. In every dialect and tongue his tales were told and his stories sung. Harsh in the Bronx, where they cheer with zest, with a burring R in the Middle West, and lilting and slow down in Arkansas, where instead of father, they say Pa. But there came a winter, these stories say, when Babe came up to Paul one day, stood still and looked him in the eye. And Paul said nothing, but he knew why. You shoulder your axe and leave this place. Let the clerk move in with his well-washed face. Let the architect with his sober plan build a residence for the average man. And garden birds not bat an eye when locomotives whistle by, and telephone wires go from town to town for lovers to whisper sweet nothings down. We must depart, but it's Christmas Eve, so let's have a feast before we leave. That is all I have to tell. The party's starting, friends, farewell.
I understand consented to share his life as his loving wife. They both look very contented. Carry her over the water, set her down under a tree, where the clovers white all day and all night, and the winds from every quarter sing a brie-o-blie, a brie-o-blie, a brie-o-blie of love.
Put a book in your finger, press her close to your heart, where the fish in the lake is not short stay, and the flood and fragrant air sing a brie-o-blie, a brie-o-blie, a brie-o-blie, a brie-o-blie, a brie-o-blie of love.
Fishes shall dance at your marriage, or steeple bend down to Lord. A pulpit and church and silver will teach, for the voices drawing your carriage. Sing a brie-o-blie, 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 brie-o-blie of love.
Where we are is not very far to walk from Grand Central Station. If you have a condition, you will know as this of a standing invitation.
When the man is so tall, the man is so tall, and finds the task of converting his ambitious dreams into practical schemes, and of seeing we all were working. Administration as a leading man in the federal plan of public works for the nation. I hope that some of you will come to offer your assistance in installing turbines and high tension lines and bringing streams from a distance. Was taken a short vacation from his battle and hate to be with us today on this important occasion. I'm not Berwitch or what? As I was saying, the earth, the well. I mean, oh hell, I'm mighty glad to be A telegram from Hollywood. A telegram from Hollywood. Inkslinger is the name, and I think that the news is good. And I think that the news is good. Technical advisor required for all-star lumber picture. Stop. Your name suggested. Stop. If interested, wire collect. Stop. Stop. A lucky break. Am I awake? Please pinch me if I'm sleeping. It only shows that no one knows the future. Lentz must go. But enough, I call upon you, sir.
Now the task that made us friends in a common labor ends. For an emptiness is named, and a wilderness is tamed, till its savage nature can tolerate the life of man. All I had to do is done. You remain, but I go on. Other kinds of deserts call, other forests whisper, call. I must hasten in reply to that low, instinctive cry, there to make a way again for the conscious lives of men. Here, though, is your life, and here the pattern is already clear that machinery imposes on you as the frontier closes. Gone the natural disciplines, and the life of choice begins. You and I must go our way. I have but one word to say. Oh, remember, friends, that you have the harder task to do. As at freedom's puzzled feet yawn the gulfs of self-defeat. All but heroes are unnerved when life and love must be deserved. That you possess.
Oh
famous call. What's to become of America now?
Every day, America's destroyed and recreated. America is what you do. America is I and you. America is what you choose to make it. Where the night becomes the day, where the dream becomes the fact. I am the eternal guest. I am way. I am act.
Than Winton himself. Check your local listings for the time and station. I'm Beverly Sills, and I'll see you there.
One of Puerto Rico's most beautiful legends, Juanina, is being presented this Saturday at the Walt Whitman Cultural Center in Camden. Some of the Delaware Valley's most talented storytellers take center stage to entertain you with Legends of Puerto Rico, a lively celebration honoring the Taíno, African, and Spanish cultures of Puerto Rico. Listen to the legends at the Walt Whitman this Saturday, April 25th. Another WHYY Community Connection.
Koussevitzky suggested to Britten that he compose an opera, and he, Koussevitzky, would fund it through the Koussevitzky Music Foundation. 3 years later, that opera came to be. Peter Grimes, the work that established Britten as perhaps the premier opera conductor in the mid-20th century. The score of Paul Bunyan is a scintillating example of Britten's youthful skills as a parodist. His admiration for Cole Porter is obvious. And there are several numbers which seem to anticipate Oklahoma, except, of course, that Oklahoma appeared 2 years after Paul Bunyan. And there are anticipations, notably in the fight scene, of Peter Grimes. Paul Bunyan demonstrates beyond doubt that Britten was a born opera composer. In the program book for this performance, the distinguished British music critic Michael Kennedy writes, "How will Paul Bunyan be received by an American audience today compared with 57 years ago? That remains to be seen." Britten himself, when he returned to the score many years after its composition, said he didn't realize how strong a piece it was. This is Martin Bookspan. Good evening.